So here's an Afghanistan war movie where the obligatory opening abbreviated history lesson catch-up sequence can't quite find the time to mention a bunch of the key historical players or anything that happened in Afghanistan before the Taliban, but does carve out a noticeably big spotlight section about how a kind and well-intentioned friend named Vladimir Putin tried to warn America about 9/11. Wow, what a considerate and obviously clever world leader whose continued influence I should not feel suspicious of at all, huh? No, I'm not kidding. That's totally in the movie. Wish I was joking around. But I'm not. Hey everybody! You know, if you're like me, you're still a bit shaken up by the shocking re-entry disintegration of the Space Shuttle Columbia, mildly concerned about the SARS virus, optimistic about the future of the gay rights movement following the Supreme Court decision in Lawrence v. Texas, excited to watch Tampa Bay play Oakland in the Super Bowl 37, surprised by how much fun that Johnny Depp pirate movie was, really hoping to see a Lord of the Rings movie finally win Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and more than a little bit amused by the election of Arnold Schwarzenegger to the governorship of California. Surely the most conceptually ridiculous elevation of an ironically popular celebrity to serious office that will ever be undertaken in American politics. Now I can tell that you and I have these things in common because we, all of us, are clearly living in the year 2003, because otherwise, why in hell am I reviewing an orgasmically patriotic Vengeance for 9/11 US military infomercial from Jerry Bruckheimer, the overriding theme of which is that charging headlong into a ground war in Afghanistan without much in the way of a plan was a noble and really smart idea that will surely work out swell in the long term for everyone involved. I guess make action movies suck again must have been in the fine print stitching. Anyway, this latest biannual handjob to keep certain Hollywood mega producers on good terms with the Pentagon, because renting authentic combat gear for the action films people actually do go to see doesn't come cheap, is based on the recently declassified true story of Task Force Dagger, a joint operation of U.S. Army Green Beret Operational Detachment Alpha 595 and CIA paramilitary ops that aimed to destabilize the Taliban in the immediate wake of September 11th attacks by integrating and providing air support to anti-Taliban militias loyal to the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan, an operation whose details were, as said, largely classified except for the innately cinematic detail that the rough terrain required much of the travel and combat to be conducted on horseback, in case you were wondering where the "oh yeah, that should be a movie" part comes in. Chris Hemsworth has the lead as the trusted but field-inexperienced Green Beret captain, charged with leading his team into the fight and striking an uneasy peace with the hardscrabble Northern Alliance fighters. And as this is a Jerry Bruckheimer military movie, you know he's bringing a whole crew of actors who you kinda wish were in more good things but are always reliably solid in this stuff, including Michael Shannon, Michael Pena, William Fichtner, Trevante Rhodes, Rob Riggle, and Saeed Tagmaoui. The film aims for its main arc to be the supposedly complex relationship between Hemsworth's character and Naveed Negahban as the commander of the Northern Alliance counterparts, i.e. two tough guys, one old, one sort of young, sharing the command of a single operation, trying to feel each other out and navigate the twisted web of priorities that have momentarily placed them on the same side against a common enemy, though with different tactics and functions. Now, dramatically, that's a solid idea, not bad at all, but 12 Strong just isn't the kind of movie to deal meaningfully in the shades of gray that would make this a meaningful relationship beyond the perfunctory lip service. Beyond that, if you've seen any of the other mediocre Afghan war movies released over the last almost 2 decades now, you've seen this one too. Handsome Hollywood actors growing out their scruffy beards, scrambling behind rocks, pretending to fire machine guns, airstrikes being called in, explosions going off, wives and families being pined for, History 101 platitudes about Afghanistan as the graveyard of empires being glibly passed off as ominous annotations. They bond, they fight, they suffer setbacks, they win, eventually they get the designated main bad guy, someone shows up back at home unexpectedly and hugs their kid, while a low guitar riff creeps in on the soundtrack, then some pre-credits block text lets you know that only the happy parts of what happened next, and someone's Uncle Carl leans back in his chair in the theater and nods earnestly and declares, "Now that was a picture," to nobody in particular. But this time, also horses, so yeah. Look, I'm not trying to sound cynical, because yes, it's a war movie, people got killed, I sure as hell remember where I was on 9/11, I get it. But the whole thing is just on the same autopilot as we've seen in dozens of other times now, and it just feels actively avoiding bringing something new to the table. Even the horse thing feels downplayed. You'd think they'd make something out of that since the movie was originally going to be called Horse Soldiers, and it's the main different thing going for it, but there's no real attempt to make the horses characters in their own right, or even meaningfully contrast the idea of mounted cavalry fighting modern tanks and anti-aircraft missiles. Instead, just some stuff about guys who can ride well, guys who cannot ride well, some random horse jokes, and that's kind of it. The action is generic, the details of what made this operation noteworthy and or special feel sanded down and generic, the actors are all doing shtick you've seen them do better elsewhere, and it's honestly not even visceral or emotionally resonant enough to pull a genuine connection out of a wound as open as 9/11 or villains as eminently hateable as the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. It's not smart enough to be of historical interest, it's not exciting enough to be good propaganda, it's not fresh or interesting enough to be, I don't know, subversive in some way. I'm sure the real guys feel pretty cool about seeing Thor and other famous dudes playing them in a movie, and that's fine, but it's pretty disposable and generic on its own, and I kind of feel like the subject matter deserves better than that. 1 star, you can care, but you don't need to bother.